Hey everyone, it's your creator name. And you know we love to break down the latest happenings in the crypto world. Today, we're diving into the PiNetwork speculation pool because let's face it, this project has been making waves. For those not in the know, PiNetwork has been quietly building its base for years, allowing users to mine from their phones. They've hit some major milestones recently, like launching their open mainnet and making serious progress with KYC verification. Now the million-dollar question literally is, when will PiNetwork finally get listed on a major exchange? That's what everyone's wondering, and the rumor mill is working overtime. We've been doing some digging, and today we're going to break down the top contenders who might be the first to list Pi. Could it be a titan like Binance or Coinbase? Or will Pi go the unconventional route and partner with a smaller exchange first? Stick around as we analyze each potential candidate's history, their listing requirements, and how PiNetwork could fit into their portfolio. By the end of this video, you'll have a much clearer picture of what the future might hold for Pi. Let's get started. Alright, let's kick things off with the undisputed heavyweight champion of crypto exchanges, Binance. I mean, let's be real, Binance is massive. They've got the volume, they've got the users, and they've got the global reach that most exchanges can only dream of. So it's no surprise that Binance is often the first platform that comes to mind when we talk about listing a hot new crypto project. But here's the thing about Binance, they're notoriously strict. And I mean really strict. They've got this rigorous vetting process for any project that wants to be listed, and they don't mess around when it comes to things like regulatory compliance, security audits, and overall project legitimacy. We've seen them delist projects that initially seemed promising, so they're not afraid to make tough calls. Now, this doesn't automatically disqualify PiNetwork. In fact, it could even work in their favor. Think about it. Getting listed on Binance would be a huge vote of confidence for Pi. It would basically signal to the entire crypto world that Pi is a serious project that's here to stay. But to make it happen, PiNetwork would need to pass Binance's rigorous due diligence process with flying colors. They'd need to demonstrate that their technology is sound, their team is credible, and their regulatory house is in order. Remember when Binance went through that whole Binance US situation with stricter regulations? That tells you just how seriously they take compliance. PiNetwork would need to prove that they're operating above board and meeting all the necessary legal requirements. So while Binance might seem like the obvious choice, it's not a guaranteed slam dunk. PiNetwork would need to bring their A-game to convince Binance that they deserve a spot on the world's largest crypto exchange. Next up, we've got Coinbase, the darling of the US crypto market. Now, Coinbase has a slightly different vibe than Binance. They're known for being a bit more conservative, especially when it comes to listing new assets. They've got a smaller selection of cryptocurrencies compared to Binance, but they make up for it with their user-friendly platform and their focus on regulatory compliance. Remember when Coinbase went public on the Nasdaq? That was a watershed moment for the entire crypto industry. It showed that traditional financial institutions were starting to take digital assets seriously, but it also meant that Coinbase had to play by the rules, and I mean, really play by the rules. Now, what does this mean for PiNetwork? Well, it means that Coinbase would be looking very closely at Pi's regulatory standing. They'd want to make sure that Pi is on the right side of the law, especially in the United States. Coinbase has been burned before by listing assets that later faced regulatory scrutiny. They had that whole XRP debacle a while back, and I'm sure they don't want to go through that again. So if PiNetwork wants to get listed on Coinbase, they need to have their ducks in a row. They need to be able to demonstrate that they're compliant with all applicable laws and regulations both in the US and internationally. They'd also need to show that there's strong demand for PI from US investors. Coinbase isn't going to list a coin just because it's popular overseas. They want to see that there's a real appetite for it among their user base. So, while Coinbase might not be the first exchange to list Pi, it would definitely be a major win for the project. It would give Pi instant credibility and legitimacy in the eyes of mainstream investors. Now let's move on to a couple of exchanges that might not be as well known as Binance or Coinbase, but they could still be major players in the PiNetwork saga. I'm talking about Kraken and OKX. These exchanges have a reputation for being a bit more adventurous than their larger counterparts. They're often willing to take a chance on promising projects, even if those projects are still in their early stages. Kraken, for example, has been around since 2011, They've weathered a lot of storms in the crypto world, and they've built up a solid reputation for security and reliability. They're also known for having a strong commitment to transparency, which is always a good sign. OKX, on the other hand, has a bit of a different story. They're a bit younger than Kraken, but they've quickly become one of the most popular exchanges in the world. They're known for their wide selection of trading pairs, their competitive fees, and their innovative features. Now, what makes Kraken and OKX interesting in the context of PiNetwork is their willingness to embrace innovation. They're not afraid to list projects that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with blockchain technology. And let's be honest, PiNetwork is definitely trying to do something different with its mobile mining approach. Another thing to keep in mind is that both Kraken and OKX have been expanding their global reach. They're both looking to tap into new markets, and listing PiNetwork could be a way to do that. Pi has a large and active community around the world, and listing on Kraken or OKX could help them reach even more potential users. So, while Kraken and OKX might not be the most obvious choices, they're definitely worth keeping an eye on. They could be the dark horses in the race to list PiNetwork. Now let's talk about a couple of exchanges that are known for their speed when it comes to listing new tokens. I'm talking about Bybit and Kcoin. These exchanges have a reputation for being very agile. They can move quickly to list new assets, often beating out their larger competitors to the punch. This speed can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it means that Bybit and Kcoin are often the first places where you can buy and sell the hottest new tokens. This can be great if you're looking to get in early on the next big thing. On the other hand, it also means that Bybit and Kcoin don't always have as much time to conduct thorough due diligence on the projects they list. This can be a bit risky, as it means that there's a higher chance of something going wrong. So, what does this mean for PiNetwork? Well, it means that Bybit and Kcoin could be potential candidates to list Pi in its early stages. They might be willing to take a chance on Pi before the larger exchanges are ready to make a move. However, it also means that PiNetwork would need to be extra careful about its own security and compliance if it were to list on Bybit or Kcoin. They would need to be confident that their project is solid and that they can withstand any scrutiny that might come their way. Another factor to consider is that Bybit and Kcoin both have a strong focus on the Asian market. This could be beneficial for PiNetwork, as they have a large and growing user base in Asia. So while Bybit and Kcoin might not be the most prestigious exchanges in the world, they could be a good fit for PiNetwork in its early stages. They could provide Pi with a platform to gain traction and build momentum before making the jump to a larger exchange. Finally, let's not forget about the regional exchanges. These are exchanges that are typically focused on a specific geographic region, such as Asia, Europe, or Latin America. They might not have the same global reach as the big players, but they can still be a significant force in their respective markets. One example of a regional exchange that could be a good fit for PiNetwork is Upbit. Upbit is a South Korean exchange that has become one of the most popular trading platforms in the country. South Korea is known for its high adoption rate of cryptocurrency, so listing on Upbit could give PiNetwork access to a large and active user base. Another example is Bitmart. Bitmart is a global exchange that has a strong presence in Asia, Europe, and North America. They're known for their low fees, their wide selection of trading pairs, and their user-friendly platform. Now, the advantage of listing on a regional exchange is that it can be a good way for a project to gain a foothold in a specific market. For example, if PiNetwork were to list on Upbit, it would send a strong signal to the South Korean crypto community that they are serious about building a presence in the country. Another advantage is that regional exchanges often have lower listing fees than the larger global exchanges. This can be a major consideration for a project like PiNetwork, which is still in its early stages and may not have a lot of capital to spare. Of course, there are also some potential drawbacks to listing on a regional exchange. The main one is that it might not generate as much global visibility as listing on a major exchange like Binance or Coinbase. However, for a project like PiNetwork, which is still in the process of building its user base and establishing its reputation, listing on a regional exchange could be a smart strategic move. It could allow them to gain traction in a key market and build momentum before making the jump to a larger platform. So, there you have it. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the behemoths like Binance and Coinbase to the regional players like Upbit and Bitmart. Each exchange has its own strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately, the decision of where to list PiNetwork will come down to a variety of factors. But now it's your turn to weigh in. Which exchange do you think will be the first to list PiNetwork? Do you think it will be one of the big names? Or will Pi go with a smaller, more agile exchange? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more crypto news and analysis. We'll be keeping a close eye on PiNetwork and all the latest developments in the crypto world. Until next time, happy trading.